Lisa's going to be talking about preserving your sanitizer
How's it
by
going?
using some support products to make your life easier, to make pool ownership more simple. And so I'm going to turn it over to Elise to talk about a few products. And there's supporting documents in your bags for all the products that we talked about tonight. Take it away, Elise.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming to Pool School. We're happy that you're all here. I work a lot with customers, both over the phone, text messages, emails. I started out at the water test station for 2 years. Now I'm back in the service office manning the maintenance program where I work with the techs on our service team to go and take care of people's pools. But in between those visits, a lot of times those people are reaching out, asking questions, getting additional guidance. And one of the things that I've seen often is a frustration with low chlorine levels, like pretty consistently. I mean, the water chemistry can be perfect. You're not really using the pool. You're not really changing anything about the water. And the chlorine just seems like it's getting zapped all the time. And so there are a couple things that can be done depending on your setup to make sure that you are able to keep those chlorine levels at a better point. The most common one that we like to talk with people about is something called Pool Perfect Total. We already have been doing this with spas for a while, where you add enzymes to the water to help break down things that chlorine kind of struggles to get rid of. And this is the version of enzymes for pools. So basically, chlorine is designed to kill things. It looks for bacteria, it looks for algae, and it goes, I'm going to kill you dead. And then that dead stuff is kind of floating in the water, and usually that weakly oxidation that Rick was talking about before is what you use to break down that dead stuff, gas it out of the water, and keep the water crystal clear and that combined chlorine level at a minimum so that your free and your total chlorines are matched. Sweat, oils, lotions, hairspray, fake tanner, you name it, these are all things that get in the water that are not alive and cannot be killed. But the chlorine isn't smart enough to see the difference. It just sees that there's something in the water that's not supposed to be there, and it goes, I kill you dead, but it can't kill it. So then you have your chlorine getting zapped up by stuff that it can't even do anything about, and it's all just sitting in the water, and you have no free chlorine to work with, and then the algae starts to come forward, and suddenly your pool is green. So enzymes love stuff that isn't alive. They love to eat sunscreen. They love to eat sweats and lotions and makeup and hairspray. And so they do the same thing to these products that the chlorine is doing to the algae and the bacteria. So if you put in a capful of this once a week into your pool, just toss it in, it goes around and it finds all that stuff in the water that would otherwise kind of be taking up all of the energy your chlorine has, breaks it down before the chlorine even sees it, so that the chlorine can actually do its job. And you reduce the chlorine consumption in your pool just with one capful a week of this stuff. It's also really good if you have a tendency of getting like scummy water lines, especially after like pool parties, and you're sitting there with a brush for like half a day and you're like, you know, this will break it down for you chemically. So it's a really great way to get your weekly routine to be less labor intensive and for your chlorine purchases over the year to be less. The other thing that I really like is pool first aid. And let's say you do get a really bad algae bloom and the pool is just, it's like a swamp. It's not even a pool anymore. It's like a frog pond. And you're spending like, you go on vacation, you know, right around the 4th of July, and you come back and you open up the pool and there are frogs blinking up at you like, hello. So when you have to put in a lot of work, a lot of chlorine to get that from being a green pool to being a whitish, bluish, cloudy pool, but it's sterilized. It's just a cloudy mess. And the traditional wisdom is just to keep throwing chlorine at it until the problem goes away. The problem is that it can take over a week for the chlorine to really clear the water unless you're putting in such huge amounts that you've essentially got a nuclear bomb in your backyard. And you want to use the pool. That's the whole point of having a pool. So instead, if you get the chlorine to the point where it has killed the algae and you have just like this blue-white mess in your pool, and then the chlorine levels usually at that point are pretty low because the chlorine has exhausted itself trying to do this job for you, you put in this enzyme, which goes through and in 48 hours, whether your pump is running or not, grabs all that hazy stuff, breaks it down, and gasses it out. And you're left with a clean pool that is clear, that you can then get your, your pucks or your salt to chlorinate properly again. People can swim in it while this is active in the water. It doesn't hurt anybody. And you have a swimming environment much more quickly than you would if you were constantly keeping your chlorine levels at 10 to 15 parts per million to try to get rid of the haze. So it's a really great problem solver, especially when you get to that point where you're like, I've already sunk 7 days into this, and I'm going to blow this thing up if I have to put in another week's worth of work. Like, I'm done. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, we don't actually have here because it's not a chemical, but I'm in the service office, and I'm a nerd, and I felt like I needed to bring this up with people. If you have hard plumbing with your pool, a really great way to reduce chlorine consumption is UV. Basically, it's like a tube that's about this big around, and it has a port at the top and a port at the bottom that you use to add it into that circuit of water that's going through your system. And there's a bulb inside, and the bulb emits UV radiation. UV doesn't necessarily kill the algae that is always in your water, like Rick was talking about before, but it does sterilize it so that it can't reproduce. And that is a very effective way of keeping your pool from turning green. So what it has is inside this tube, there is like a quartz sleeve that's pretty close around the bulb. And the water is forced to go through between the sleeve and the bulb so that no water is left unimpacted by this UV radiation. And the radiation is just scouring everything that goes through. And so then the algae that comes out on the other side can't reproduce, and your chlorine doesn't have to work as hard because there's less algae to kill. So that can also be a really effective way to reduce your consumption. And once you have a UV system in, it's pretty much takes care of itself. Every handful of years you have to replace the bulb because it burns out, or you have to replace the quartz sleeve because it gets tiny little fractures during the winter and it cracks and you got to swap it out. But other than that, I've seen people cut their chlorine consumption in half by using a UV system. So it can be really helpful too. So that being said, what questions do people have? Yes?
So do you recommend using both the Pool Perfect and the First Aid, or one or the other, or?
Yeah, whether you use both or just one of them is a great question. So the Pool Perfect Total is it's like a maintenance chemical, kind of like weekly oxidation. You would be putting this in on a weekly basis, not necessarily at the same time as the shock, because the shock would kill the enzymes, but it's a maintenance to kind of keep the problem from happening in the first place. If you have a problem and then you're trying to clean up at the end, that's where the Pool First Aid comes in. Yeah. What else?
Would that help my problem I'm having right now that you're talking about?
When it's no longer green, this will be helpful. And yes, we were going to get to that point when your pool is from the green state to the cloudy state. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
I know you said you can swim while the first aid's in. Can you swim while the first one's in?
Yes, Pool Perfect Total, you can also swim. Enzymes are totally harmless. So people put them in their hot tubs all the time too. It's called Spa Perfect if you have a hot tub. And yeah, you can swim at any point. It's fine. Yeah.
Can you swim with the first one in?
Supreme Plus? Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Just a question. I use the Pool Perfect every week.
Okay.
I've been putting it in and I've had really good luck with it.
Great.
I've been putting it in the skimmer.
Mhm.
Is that, because you said you can just toss it in?
Yeah. Yeah, whether you put it in the pool or in the skimmer doesn't matter. The enzymes are going to impact the system the same way one way or the other.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Cool. Well, thanks for your time, everybody.